Probably about 3 years into being a trial attorney, I think externally everything looks great. And nevertheless, I didn't feel well inside. And I had just one of the most depressive, dark kind of times in my life because I was so laser focused on getting there, wherever that is, right? I thought, hey, if I get there, that's where happiness is, right? And then I'll be happy. And then you find yourself and you realize, no, that wasn't it. That wasn't the thing that you were actually searching for, or you would feel fulfilled. And I began seeking more, right?
Hi, Ryan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspectives, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I must start by asking you, what does peak performance mean to you?
To me, peak performance is a holistic thing, right? It's when a person on their journey really grows and finds themselves as their best self, or at least on a path to becoming their best self. So it's not just performance in business, right? And I think so many people, entrepreneurs, if that's the only metric in life, right? How am I doing professionally? I think when you neglect those other areas of life, it's impossible to be at a peak performance. So I think truly it's when you, on your journey, really appreciate how important each part of life is, and you can act as your best self in those. I think that's what peak performance is, Mark.
How do you go about maintaining this holistic approach with your business and balancing health and all of these other things in your personal life?
It's really making time, and very intentionally. And I think for me, I have had enough, I guess, negative experiences where when you see, say, a time in your life, like me personally, if I exercise, especially in the morning, right? That could be for 30 minutes or for 2 hours, right? If I exercise in the morning, I'm going to have a better day. If I exercise 5 days in a week, I'm going to have probably a pretty great week. In the times that I convince myself that I'm too busy to do that, and you say you get in 3 weeks, a month, you really haven't moved your body much, I really start to see just the negative effects that it has. The inherent stresses of being an entrepreneur are a bit heavier in my experience. And then I think, let other things start to slide. Say I'm in one of those ruts, right? You're not maybe eating as healthy. You're maybe eating on the go more because you've told yourself you don't even have enough time to exercise, let alone to stop and eat. And then I think importantly as well, I think it's a little in terms of relationships, right? I think if you're younger or single, no kids, you don't have a children or a partner or a spouse that lives with you and requires maintenance of that on a regular basis. I think once you cross that threshold and you have a family, so whatever it is, you have to pause and ask yourself and check in. Am I being present? Am I just yapping them and moving on to the next thing? Or are you carrying things from being stressed out into those interactions? And again, speaking from a place of I've had enough opportunities where you just see or catch yourself not being your best self in all aspects of life, that I really try and hammer down and just be disciplined about those sorts of things. And if not disciplined, aware, right? Being self-aware about them.
A very interesting and rich career journey where you started as a trial lawyer and then you have moved into entrepreneurship. So tell us a little bit about what was the pivotal moment that inspired you to make this shift?
As a young trial attorney, I was always interested in business. And for whatever reason, law school really called me. And at first, I just wanted to see what we could do from a financial perspective. So I think my very first small business while I'm a young lawyer, some friends and I opened a commercial cleaning company. That was the very first thing. And we started with maybe $5,000, $10,000. I think I ordered most of the equipment on my Overstock.com credit card, which I was very surprised as to the amount of commercial janitorial equipment you could buy. But I had a big enough credit. It was like 0%, 48 months. I'm like, we'll be all right. And that's how we started that. And we had a partner who was already working with an outfit in the industry, a more sweat equity partner. And yeah, we built it and building a website and all, and just top to bottom, we were babies in it. And then when I started moving into, I think, larger scale things, it ended up being more with a purpose. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about my legal career is truly, in the things that I remember, it's helping people. If you were to ask me what kind of law you practice, right? I'm really fortunate and was really fortunate to have the experience. It's if you watch a show like The Practice or some of those other legal shows, like that, right? I may be doing a criminal case one day. I may be filing a civil case against the government. I may have someone that's wrongfully killed. I may have any number of things that I'm dealing with. So I've got to touch a lot of different areas of people's lives, right? Really getting people justice. And some people who really shouldn't have been charged criminally for things who were truly innocent. Those are the scary ones, right? When someone's truly innocent. But to be able to save them, there's no better feeling in the world. And especially when you have to do it by way of a jury trial. You're stepping into the arena and this person's life is in your hands. And that's just an amazing feeling. And the first, I guess, bigger swing into entrepreneurship was at the beginning of COVID. And there was a massive need for trust, power of attorney, medical power of attorney all over the country. And the reason there was such a need that wasn't being met is for a lot of those documents, they have to be notarized, witnessed, especially a medical power of attorney in over 30 states. You have to have a notary and 2 disinterested witnesses. It's a uniform policy. For a will to be self-proving, you have to have the same thing. And the people who were most at high risk, no one could go and perform this work. They couldn't take notaries into a nursing home and attorneys and disinterested witnesses and all of this. And so I saw that they were rapidly changing notary laws around the country for the first time, notaries go back to ancient Egypt. And for the first time in history, they were allowing witnesses and notaries to appear virtually. Now, a couple of states at the beginning of COVID, Florida and one other, certain transactions, they would let a virtual notary, but these were different. These were wet signed documents. In a lot of states require you can't even electronically sign these things. And so we created a solution to meet that need, to connect people and fill that gap. And then where I'm at now, it was a similar thing. We saw a problem to be solved and just had to try it, just had to do it.
Love it. Tell us a little bit about this IRS compliant pandemic era tax software that you have created through your company, Setsi Pros.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess where do I start? So here was the problem to be solved, right? And for the listeners out there, some call it Setsi Pros, some call it SETC Pros. So that's how you spell it, SETC Pros. So the problem to be solved there was, okay, we have 40 to 80 million people in the United States who, during COVID, during those years, 2021, they were considered to be self-employed. They have self-employed income. You're talking about the entire gig economy, every sole proprietor, most small business owners, depending on how they're taxed, a lot of partnerships. And then a huge number is every 1099 contractor, which, so many industries, realtors, they get a lot of their money 1099. A lot in the construction industry, that's a huge sector. A lot in the hospitality and entertainment industry. So you're thinking DJs, anyone who touches, let's say, most of the services at a wedding, right? Those are all 1099 contractors. The caterer is a contractor, the photographer is a contractor, the DJ is a contractor. I could keep going with this. And so it's a huge percentage of the working population. A little over a year ago, I learned that, hey, there are billions and billions of dollars that were earmarked for the entrepreneurs, for the solopreneurs, for the gig economy, right? For realtors, for small business owners. And if they don't learn about it, and if they're not given a way to, one, find out, are they eligible, right? And then to obtain the documents that they need, this money's just going to go away. They'll never know. And when we started the process, we were basically, from the processing perspective, a large class action firm based in Washington, D.C., who had purchased a CPA firm, and they had been processing on the employer side of things a lot of the ERC, the employer retention credit. And so when we saw that, and this, what we're focused on right now, it comes from the same legislation that the ERC came from. It's all the same bill. And so when we started into it and doing it in that manner, it was inefficient due to the number of people that there are. And what we were able to do, we were able to leverage some amazing corporate partnerships that, for us, it allows us to pull our customers' data that we need directly from the IRS. So the first thing that it did, it eliminated people having to go find those documents and then upload them onto the internet. And what it allows is a really safe, secure way for us to obtain that data. And once we were able to do that, we were able to increase our efficiency and lower a lot of hard costs in processing by developing a proprietary software that we're able to, for anyone who wants to see if they're eligible, completely free to check your eligibility. You just come to the website. It's an interview style questionnaire specifically about days in different categories during the applicable time periods that people missed. We're able to then use that verified IRS data, and we put everything together, and we're able to generate the documents that are necessary for our customers to send in. And then the processing time from the IRS, it can take, we see some that are processed in about 8 weeks. Some are up to 20 weeks. But after that, they just receive direct deposit or a check from the IRS in the mail. And
what is this website, while you're at it, if you just want to mention it to the users?
Yeah, absolutely. So setcpros.com, setcpros.com. And I guess kind of one of the things I think is important for everyone to know, when we do this for most of our customers, they have the option, they don't have to pay if and until they actually receive their money from the IRS. Folks come in, fill in the information. When we get the data from the IRS, we're able to transmit back, here's what the calculated refund amount that we have is. And if they want to move forward with the process, we just verify generally a payment information for later. Now, if they owe the IRS a certain amount of money to where they're not actually going to receive anything, and it just takes down their tax debt, which, heck, if someone has back tax debt, that's better than money. That is gone. And then we do a reduced rate for those folks and work with everyone we can to get as many people as much as we possibly can while it's happening.
Why do you think there are so many self-employed people who are unaware of this pandemic era tax credit available to them?
That's a great question. I am thrilled, and all of the people who are taking advantage of this are thrilled that Congress passed this legislation. Okay. They do not advertise it. And very simply, they don't advertise it. And you know, there's a lot of tax credits for small business owners in different areas. And this is one of them, probably at a larger scale, that they just don't know about. And, you know, when you look at a Fortune 500 company or very large companies, and you hear about the tax credits they get and their effective tax rate being lowered and so on and so forth, that's because they have a team of professionals that stays on top of knowing what legislation there's been, what tax credits they can claim for what, and often they take advantage of that. So in a nutshell, it's just simply no one advertises it. And then, which was all the more reason for us, we see our mission as much as anything as being educational in nature. Want people to be empowered with enough education about this and feel good enough about it that they feel okay taking advantage of it. And it's what they're owed. So it's just a lack of education. All the more reason we came to see you, Mark.
What are some common misconceptions that you find freelancers and small business owners have when it comes to tax credits like FFCRA?
Absolutely. So I think there's some misinformation that floats around. One of the biggest things, some people think it's a loan that you have to repay, like the PPP program. It's not. it's a tax refund. So the great thing about it is a tax refund is non-taxable. If someone is going to say receive $5,000, right? Say someone's going to receive $5,000. That $5,000 is paid as though that person overpaid their taxes in one. So the great thing about that is too, not only is it tax-free, the IRS pays interest on top of it as though the customer overpaid their taxes in their 2021s and 2020. So we're seeing our clients get about 16% interest on top. So if someone is going to get 5,000 and we tell them 5,000, they're actually going to get more like 5,800. We don't tell them much about the interest. We like everyone to just be surprised. If someone gets 10,000, they get an extra 1,600 bucks. So that's a great thing. Now, a couple of the other misconceptions, right? You have someone that I heard someone I was talking to one day, an Uber driver in New York, and they're afraid to look at it because they're afraid of being audited. And listen, an audit is a legitimate concern, but for anyone, but these, as long as people are honest when they answer the questions, there really should be nothing to worry about. It's very straightforward. And the maximum benefit here is $32,220. That's a nice chunk of change. There were other programs and limited upside benefit. Companies are getting millions and millions of dollars between the ERC, PPP program, massive companies, and even mid-sized companies getting millions of dollars. I've seen, a number of ERC claims into the seven figures. With this, it's a couple of basic categories, right? You have the sick leave credit, and the sick leave credit is for the individual, right? And if you're married filing jointly, couples are able to, if you have two self-employed couples, the maximum benefit doubles, right? So the sick leave credit, that's up to $511 per day. And then there's 2 periods on the 2021. So you can actually claim it up to 20 days, but you have the first quarter of 21 and the second 2 quarters. So those are 10-day maxes in each of those periods. So 511 times 10, it's about a little over 5,100 as the max in both of those. So on a year, it's a little over 10,200 for the year if someone were to max that out. And the daily benefit amount is determined by how much that person earned in self-employed income in either 21 or the previous year, whichever is greater. They're able to use the greater of as a baseline for the calculation. The second, and so that category is government shutdown, quarantine. You have COVID, you have to quarantine for whatever reason. Like it pretty much anything under the COVID sun, if it is COVID related, they have that. Right. And if you recall back then, we had new variants coming out. People were being reinfected. People were having to get boosters and revaccinated. So all of that really falls under that category. And our website explains that in pretty great detail. The second category, that's for family leave. So in that category, the overwhelming majority of people who benefit there are parents or caretakers, children, or mentally incapacitated adults that they're otherwise, whether it be school, daycare, a babysitter, anything like that was shut down. In the state of California, schools were shut down deep into 2021. And so what you had were a lot of couples, they can't go to work, or one person, or if someone's a single parent, right? A great example would be to look at the beauty industry. The beauty industry, you have stylists, nails, makeup artists, on and on, massage therapists. Those are predominantly self-employed or 1099 people. The structure at most salons is they're paying a booth rental and getting 1099 for it. A lot of folks in those industries, they have children. And now schools are closed and so are daycares. And you can't have a bunch of people over at a babysitter. But you really saw often even in a couple situation, a lot of women would be the ones to stay home and in all of those different fields in any number. And then the same as fathers would have to take off too. And then, like I said, you can have caretakers. So that benefit you can do between the two, there's a cumulative number of days of 100 between the 2 periods. 50 and 60, and it's up to $200 a day. With that benefit, a person can end up with 20-ish thousand from that benefit. And I'll tell you the average number that we see, right? Everything we've ever calculated, the average benefit's about $4,200, and then throw interest on that, you end up at just about $5,000 is what most people end up at. Now, folks with children, that average is higher. You're going to get more into the 10, 12 range with folks that had to miss a lot due to children.
So in essence, if your job was affected due to the pandemic, on top of that, if you have kids and you have to stay home and take care of the kids, one or both spouses, one could potentially qualify for some amount of money. And the only way to find that would be to go to setcpros.com and fill out information and understand their qualification.
Yes, that's it. And it's completely free. There's no risk to it. And we love to see people receiving this benefit. I can't even begin to tell you. I called a random customer, which I love to do, and I saw that they had a payment of about $19,000 being issued on the 25th of October. And I got to pick up the phone, called him on a Friday night and said, introduced myself. And to be able to give him that news, he's a construction worker in Houston, and he said things have been slow lately, he'd been laid off, and I got to let him know that he's getting a $19,000 tax refund next week. So yeah, it's incredible. It's worth just coming and taking a look. Absolutely nothing to lose.
Not only there's such a rewarding aspect to be able to bring such great news, especially this time of the year before Christmas, to families, but on the other side of things, what has been the most challenging part of scaling SETC Pros? I'll just call it SETC Pros.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
To recover over 70 million in refunds. That is something that needed to be said. This is not a couple of $1,000s or a couple of $100,000. You have helped people already recover 70 million in refunds. So what's the most challenging part running something like this when especially people don't even know that they qualify for this?
I wish I had one answer for you. I'm just thinking back through the scaling process. I'll say this, we understanding the opportunity size of what we were doing and the necessity of building a system that could handle that kind of volume. I guess in a nutshell, it was in building with intentionality, even in the early phases, to be large enough for the company to do all of the little things right, so that if thousands of people are coming to the site per day and filling this out and going through the process and so on and so forth, which I venture to say come closer to the deadline. And as more people realize that this is real and people are getting money, you can end up, there's 20 to 40 million eligible people. I would venture to say less than 3% of people, and I'm being generous, who are eligible have taken advantage of this. And that's knowing where the whole industry stands. I'd say less than 3% of people. For us, when we're building our back-end system, it's not just stand up a back-end system. It was ensuring we have the highest level of security, ensuring that we're not going to have any breakage anywhere along the way, whether it's 1,000, 5,000, 50,000 people coming to our website, having to get out ahead of all of that and make sure we don't crash, right? And making sure our data is safe and secure. And then the other phases of it, the customer service aspect, building up a bilingual customer service department, and just ensuring that as we grow as an organization, that our standards for anything stay 10 out of 10, right? How are we interacting with our customers? And when our customers aren't looking and what's happening behind the scenes, are we a 10 out of 10? Are we really that buttoned up with security? Are we really that buttoned up with these other things? And for that, when you're just taking in customers and just taking in things, I think a part of that challenge is when you build something from scratch and you're scaling something up, you have to find people who believe in what you're doing, can see the vision, and can, even though, hey, we're only getting 50 people a day right now, we're going to build it for 50,000. Right. And there's a lot of long hours, and there's a lot, there was at least a 5-month period. I'm telling you, I maybe slept 2 hours a day. Maybe I drank a lot of energy drinks and I'm off of them now, but it was a lot. So the personalities, that you're necessarily going to have to navigate as you scale an organization, that was just some of the more challenging moments, and having to find the right fit for people, or, hey, we started this, but this one personality doesn't jive with the rest, or they don't see the vision. I think for any organization that can be very challenging, but just hitting some of those road bumps along the way and just having to figure it out.
Ryan, as I speak to you, you were already a very successful trial lawyer. After that, you have been an entrepreneur. You didn't really have to do this. When someone goes out of their way to be able to do good for people, sleeping 2 hours a day for months in a row, drinking energy drinks, those actions come after a belief system. Because almost always our belief system dictates what we end up doing. So tell me about this belief system, because I know that being the good, generous giver type of a person you are, there is a spiritual growth that has influenced you to become this version of you. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'd love to, Mark, actually. I'd love to. So I think the journey that I went on, and I think a lot of young people who are coming up and wanting to make it, right? I'm a first generation college student, right? At that. And just wanting to really make something of yourself. And I went down the path of law, right? And I had good success in law school, especially from the growing trial attorney perspective. I was on several national trial competition teams, won some in-house competitions. I did a lot. I did about all I could do in that regard. And then as soon as I get out into practice, I had the opportunity to try cases young, and I was equipped for that. And this is what we were talking about, what peak performance means and how you evaluate that. So I probably about 3 years into being a trial attorney, I think externally, everything looks great. I'm doing very well. I'm having a lot of success. I'm trying and winning some pretty exceptional cases. And nevertheless, I didn't feel well inside. And I had just one of the most depressive, dark kind of times in my life. Didn't handle interpersonal relationships in the right way because I was so laser focused and on getting there, wherever that is, right? That for a number of years, anything that remotely interfered with that, I saw as a roadblock, right? I had a laser focused place, and I thought, hey, if I get there, that's where happiness is, right? And then I'll be happy. Then I'll have made it. And then you find yourself there, or at least in the ballpark, and you realize, no, that wasn't it. That wasn't the thing that you were actually searching for, or you would feel fulfilled. And I began seeking more, right? Philosophically, and really trying to ask big questions. And I just started reading, really started getting into just different self-help. And I studied philosophy in undergrad at University of Illinois. I minored in philosophy there. So it already opened my mind, but I guess I didn't really get it, right? Like Descartes, I didn't really get what he was saying in college. I understood generally, like you have two minds, but then when you get into spiritual teachings, it makes a whole lot more sense. Exactly what he was saying. And I started reading different things. The first book, when I hit this low point, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, but the Bhagavad Gita, close enough? So read that, started looking at reading a lot in Hinduism, Buddhism, and just everywhere, just seeking knowledge. And then I got my bearings in that and started just really becoming much more spiritual, really appreciating and understanding God. And I was able to start manifesting things very rapidly. And even just understanding my mindset, right? When walking, say, into a courtroom or walking into a courthouse. You could be walking into the courthouse. I hope I don't mess up. I hope I don't mess up. What was I supposed to say? Or you're just envisioning yourself walking out feeling amazing, and you're envisioning things going right, and you're feeling what it feels like. And so around that time, like before I walk in, say a trial or something big, I would just sit in my car and look at the door of the courthouse. And I would envision myself coming out, and I feel great and my client feels great, and just staying focused on that and carrying that kind of energy in there. And then that shift delivered results rapidly, right? And more importantly, I felt better inside. And I think it was all of that that just really reconnected me to spirituality. I have always had an inherently very giving nature. My biggest problem, probably as a lawyer, especially like hourly fees, like I don't charge enough because I'm just helping this person. And then but I've always been a very privately giving person. But when you go through those kind of difficult times, especially when you're navigating a new career and you get into a dark place, I don't know, you get disconnected from yourself, right? You get disconnected from your true self. And so I got to go on this journey of being connected with myself spiritually and not hoping God is real, but knowing, and in a very deep. And I think a lot of people, whatever concept, whatever world they come from, the version of God that they're given when they're young, a lot of people, not all, you don't want to be wrong. So you're like, okay, and you believe it, right? But maybe not know it. And maybe when they start to grow up, start to doubt it. And because there's really individualized specific things of that particular teaching they don't agree with, so they write off God altogether, or that concept, or whatever you want to call it, right? The universe, what have you, that there's more going on here. And I think that's where the disconnect a lot of times happens for people. And if they do get disconnected with that or never have the opportunity to connect with that, it becomes a dark place. And again, I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of successful people go through that. And for me to be able to be connected to that and then to operate from that place, and then to really know that happiness does not lie in checking some box, getting some award, making some certain amount of money, right? Oh, now I've made this much or what have you. Happiness and the things that really, I think, feed your soul, and if you can do it professionally, if you can help people in a meaningful way, and it doesn't have to be monetarily. It may be a product that improves their life. It may be a service that improves their life. It may be something entertaining, right? The internet was the reason for at least my path to trying to find enlightenment. It gave me rapid resources to develop, and so many teachers and teachings that you can find at your fingertips, and even business, a lot of business information, right? And like what you're doing in your project, like every single person that listens to your show, you're giving to them, right? They're benefiting. You don't charge them to do it. And they're being enriched and they're growing. And that's what it is. It's service. And I know that was a very long-winded answer, but to get to this opportunity where I'll never forget, I'm standing on my front porch and I'm like, here's billions of dollars. Here's 40 to 80 million people. And how do we get them to here? How do we lead them to this and allow them to take advantage of a benefit? It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone could always use a couple extra bucks. And the conversations I've got to have, the gentleman the other day who's been laid off as a construction worker, I've talked to people, they're getting car repairs. It changed their life. And it's amazing. A lot of times they don't need 32,000 to change their life. They just made $3,000 may change their life in that moment. 5, it may be new tires on their car, some bills they've been meaning to catch up on, any number of emergencies. So the fulfillment of that it's unmatched. I don't know if the universe is ever going to give me anything as cool to do again, giving people checks in the mail. I hope so. Not on the heels of any sort of disaster, but it's been the journey of a lifetime so far. It's getting better.
You're currently working on a book, Connecting the Dots. Tell us a little bit about what readers can take away when they read this book.
So Connecting the Dots is, I started working on it for the underlying reason. What I had mentioned is I think that a lot of people, humans, let's say, right? I guess all people are humans, but humans, they become disconnected from themselves. And the pattern, at least that I experienced, was I was predominantly raised in a pretty rural place, right? Pretty rural place. And so in that area, you're going to be served a certain version of a religion, right? And you can look at there's wild variations on how it's interpreted, how it's taught, how it's shared. The manner in which I was taught when I was young, I became disconnected from that because it wasn't taught to me in a way that I could appreciate it, see it, feel it, resonate with it. And so I became disconnected from source. I became disconnected, simple as that. And we are in a time of the highest suicide rates, the highest depression rates, the highest, so many negative rates. And I believe it is in part due to the fact that so many people have become disconnected from source, right? And from that energy. And so with connecting the dots, there's a few things. In the beginning, I want to just share with people a couple of concepts that are necessary for a human being to understand and be able to observe their own mind so that they can take in new information and consider it, especially when it comes to spirituality. And because there's cognitive dissonance, okay? Cognitive dissonance. And for anyone who's not familiar with cognitive dissonance, basically it's the uncomfortable feeling that the mind is going to feel if you're holding two conflicting beliefs at one time. And from an evolutionary perspective, the mind, once it knows a fact, does not want to change that fact. Because if you're standing on the edge of a cliff, you have to know you can't fly or it's not going to work out well. And then you can extract that all across humanity. So from a just survival perspective, cognitive dissonance is a necessary safeguard to not doing things that can harm you. Now, the problem is cognitive dissonance makes no distinction between is this survival or what's better, blueberries or strawberries. It's going to feel the same passion about its belief, right? And so and then we have confirmation bias, right? Where if someone is already given a conclusion, they're going to see evidence to fit that conclusion. Or if they already have a conclusion in their mind, they're going to take in evidence to see that. That's why, you can two astrophysicist folks, one on one side of the political spectrum, one on the other, and they will argue until they're blue in the face. And what's actually happening in their minds, the other is actually reinforcing the other one's previously held beliefs. So they're never going to make any headway, okay? The reason that I start off like this is if a person isn't aware of their own experience of cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias and analyzing the world around them, it will be very hard to change. And what most people have to have is a rock bottom moment or ego death kind of moment for them to break through that barrier that exists in the mind to take in new information, no different than me when I'm on the outside doing great, on the inside, absolutely devastated, miserable, can't figure out what it is, why I feel so bad on the inside. And again, it's often a disconnection with source, I think, is the answer for most people. And but even the cognitive dissonance that they experience, if they have any negative view of spirituality, they'll reject that immediately without obtaining new things. So starting off, just getting people, and I've explained it in a very simplistic way. And I'll tell you, just as a little aside, as a trial lawyer, I have greatly studied, as one might guess, decision making, but neuropsychological decision making on a deep level. So I understand better than most how the brain actually makes decisions, how the brain actually decides things. And it's not how most people would think. By the time they're giving the logic for it, that's just the previously held belief system and then the ego, cognitive dissonance, all kind of working together to give you a logical reason for the conclusion, right? And that was very eye-opening for me as a trial attorney, is understanding how the mind actually works. because as a human, right, we're connecting the dots and it's getting people to realize the mind is just a data information processing center, that there is a larger part of them, and that the human is truly a vessel. And so I walk through, after we get that kind of discussion out of the way, what I really try and do is walk through one of the chapters, everyone's singing the same song, okay? And so in that, it is showing people that these discussions in various religions, in various philosophies, all of these poets, all someone in there, in that line of knowledge, reached enlightenment. And enlightenment isn't, I don't think, what a lot of people think enlightenment is this far off thing that you can never get to. And if you do, then you'll be enlightened forever. And I do believe that there are way more enlightened people in the world walking around than people realize. But they're in human bodies, right? So they're not going to be in this state of enlightenment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the people who, once you at least can start to understand and it all kind of clicks, you can see those people for who they are. And when they're out here talking, and when you see a shift, even certain celebrity or things like that, and you just hear how they talk about existence, they've reached a place of existence mentally and spiritually that if you have not, you will not recognize it. And if you have, you can see it in them. And walk through the more academic side of everyone singing the same song. And then have another title, another chapter, Pop Culture Prophets. And you can then look at, I have a massive list of songs from the last 50, 60 years, and pulling out parts and verses where they're telling you about the law of attraction. They're telling you how to play the game. So many Beatles lyrics, right? They're giving you very spiritual information, and it sounds quite simplistic, but when you hear it and you get it, they are speaking to you from a different place, right? And it's what I hope is in providing, it's not just my opinion, and it's here, and again, how many religions exist, right? Somebody along the way found a place of enlightenment. And regardless of how anyone feels about rejecting, if they have whatever status or what have you, right? These are enlightened people. These people are tapped in with source. They're prophets at the very least, right? And when you see how it's all the same thing generally, and Bertrand Russell, amazing philosopher, a lot of his stuff, you can tell, like Bertrand Russell got it, okay? And when you can really hear him, and so I want to connect those dots. And then Pop Culture Prophets too, I think it will be eye-opening as well. And just walking through and then looking at other figures. And now we're so fortunate that we have the internet, that we're able to take recorded things. You're able to look at certain athletes, right? You read in between the lines, even in their interviews. You can see in their process, they're going through the steps of effectively the law of attraction, right? They're going to go through visualization. They're going to go through feeling the feeling. They're going to go through all of this. Some people don't consider themselves spiritual and believe in the law of attraction. It's all the same thing. You read so many things biblically, it's the law of attraction. They're just saying it in a different way. And what my hope is to take the reader, especially the readers who feel disconnected, the readers who feel lost, and show them where to look and how to gain this information, and to give them the knowledge to be able to guard against their own mind, and to be able to observe their own thoughts, and to be able to say, hey, am I having cognitive dissonance about this? Am I having confirmation bias? So that they can open their minds. There's a whole nother layer of life happening. And if you can't see it, you can't see it. But once you can, and again, it's not a 24-hour day, 7-day a week thing, but when you're in that place, life takes on a whole new meaning. And I want as many people as possible to be able to do that, and to get to enjoy that perspective. And as we mentioned, every facet of life, what is peak performance? Honestly, in the end, it all ends up starting back to there, right? And then when someone comes to appreciate the regulation of their mind and has the tools to do it and understanding their spiritual nature, it all generally then starts there, right? At peak performance. And then if that's centered and you get your ducks in a row in that regard, mentally every day, those other aspects of life, they become a lot easier. And that's what I want to share with people. That's the journey I went on.
Ryan, in my position here, I get to interview a lot of talented people who are doing a lot of good work. But I must say that very rarely do I come across a polymath like yourself who is well versed in all aspects of the law and entrepreneurship and philosophy and all types of other things. It really paints a picture of who the person is behind doing all these things. Because it's one thing to be successful in one area of life. It's another thing to be successful in multiple areas of life. It's a whole another thing to be philosophical and having attitude where you truly want to educate people and bring joy and happiness to their life through the lessons you have learned and sharing your journey with them. So thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing, letting us get a glimpse into the mind of a peak performer like you. Any last words for our audience members?
I just wish everyone well, honestly. I truly do. I truly hope that everyone, if you are hearing this, really continue to open your mind and find as many teachers as you can. And I just wish you luck on your journey of development and growth. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Mark.